Good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to my channel. We're out on Blizzard again, my Himalayan. And this time, last time I showed you some of the White Peak, but this time I'm going to go the opposite direction and show you some of the dark excuse me, some of the dark peak. There's Lee the postman. He's been to our place. So yes, we'll leave the pretty village of Worsley. Everywhere's pretty on a day like today, isn't it really? And we're heading off towards the west, a little bit north and west to be honest, over the moors. Not quite over the moors and far away, but across the moors. Towards one or two quite spectacular Gritstone crags, Gritstone escarpments. So bear with me and enjoy the ride. Nice and steady over the cattle grid. You can see the limestone escarpments, the limestone hills over to the right, whereas we're going to go up to the left and across the more barren Gritstone moors. Constantly on the lookout for wildlife. It's quite a reasonable sized herd of red deer knockabout on these moors. And they can appear at the most inopportune moments. At the top of here we've got one of our local landmarks, the Mermaid's Pool. All sorts of legends about the Mermaid's Pool, one of which is that it's bottomless, which it isn't. So there's the Mermaid Pool, and then you might be able to see a stretch of water in the middle distance, and that's Tiddersworth Reservoir, much bigger than it looks. You can only see a small part of it. And then we begin to see the escarpments of the Roaches. There's the Roaches, there's Hangcloud, there's Ramshire Rocks, and I'll show you as much of them as I can whilst we're out today. During my time as a local policeman, I received all sorts of stuff that had been found at the bottom of the pool. Divers, either wanting to prove or disprove the fact that it was bottomless. Well, it wasn't bottomless, just very, very muddy. A couple of safes have been thrown in there, probably following burglaries and robberies. Empty, of course. nowadays. Sad when these pubs close down, but it's right out in the middle of nowhere and not very accessible, not with the drink anymore and everything. Very commanding views from this ridge we're on at the moment. This is part of a long ridge called Moorland. Take a little pause here so I can show you the Gritstone escarpments. Ramshire Rocks to the right. Directly in front of us now is Hang Cloud, and beyond is the Roaches, and a little pointed hill in the distance, that's Shutlinslow, just over into Cheshire. A little bit hazy today, but you might be able to make out down below us in front of us is the town of Leek, LWK. Leek was very much a textile town. I say was, like so many industries, all but died off. Leek's my hometown. So really are on home territory here. Just coming down to the village of Thorncliffe. Well, it's more a hamlet than a village, really. We're going to turn right just before the village itself. Got a better view of Hang Cloud and the Roaches now. Like I said, it's a little bit hazy today, but as we get closer it'll get clearer. And it is quite a spectacular set of outcrops. Now the Pennine chain, the backbone of England, shall we say, is considered by many to end at the start of the Pennine Way, which is up at Edale, well into Derbyshire. But in actual fact, the Pennine chain continues down to here and beyond in actual fact, because there are still Gritstone outcrops even south of Leek. And the Roaches are often known as the Pennine Tail. Now we're coming down to the village of Upper Hume, and this, surprisingly enough, was a hive of industry back in the 60s and early 70s. Lot of mill buildings, factory buildings. One of the biggest companies in Leek, textile companies, was a company called Tatton's, and they had mills all over the place, mainly in Leek, but out towards Ashbourne and here as well. This was a busy one of Tatton's mills, but they closed down. There's Roaches Engineering, there's one or two others. One or two I've lost touch with what goes on around here these days. I wonder how many people are going to be up here today. Lots of areas have already started their Easter holidays, so I can imagine there's going to be quite a few people up here. Very, very popular with tourists. So up to the right of us we've got Hen Cloud through the trees, and then directly in front of us is the Roaches themselves, as you might say, the Roaches proper. And there's a feature on the Roaches. If I can find somewhere to park this little bike, I'll take you up and show you. This is where I started my climbing career back in 1966. Seems such a long time ago now. There's one or two places I can squeeze in. I'm not going to be here for long. This'll do. Now we're going to take a walk up, just a short distance, up to the start of the rocks, because there's something up here I really do want to show you. Just a short footpath. Nice information board. It's new, this is. It's new to me at least. It's a while since I've been up here. This is part of the national park, the Peak District National Park, which is the first of our national parks in actual fact. Designated 1951, April 1951. So it's, as a national park, it's 70 years old this year. Now you can see in front of us, that's the main section of the Roaches, and where we're walking up to is a feature known as Rock Hall Cottage, also known as the Donwillans Memorial Hut. This whole area was part and parcel of a huge country estate from the mid 1800s up until the 1970s. It belonged to the Brocklehurst family of Swithamley, and prior to that it belonged to the Traffords, or the D Traffords, which is my name. So I do feel a very strong affinity with this place, as you can imagine. Now we'll sit here and get my breath back, because I'm out of condition. Now this is Rock Hall Cottage, or the Don Willans Memorial Hut. Back in the late 40s and into the 50s, there was a phenomenal climbing partnership from Manchester, both from the building industry, Don Willans and Joe Brown, and they were absolutely phenomenal as a climbing partnership. Both of them have sadly passed now, but this was dedicated in the 1990s to the memory of Don Willans. He was the first to pop his clogs in the 80s, and for a long time, because there had been a fund put together for his memory, they didn't know what to spend the money on. And this was the obvious choice, really, because directly above the hut and up to our left is the first place that Don and Joe actually climbed together. This is where it all started for them. That was in the days of the Rock and Ice Climbing Club. Very, very hard climbers in that club. But the origins of the place, the arched door, the French windows you can see in front, that was just a basic cave, and this was a cave that was actually a residence. And probably the best known of the people that lived here was Bess Bowyer. She was a lady who lived well into her 90s, and this is where she lived her days. But then the Brocklehursts became the owners of the estate, and they employed gamekeepers, and they built the building, the actual building that we're looking at, to house their gamekeepers back in 1862, if memory serves. So what used to be the cave, well, it still is the cave basically, but it's formed by a jumble of boulders. That's the kitchen, and then that's the main entrance in front of us, and then to the left is the dining room cum common room, and then the rest of the windows are all to the dormitory bedrooms upstairs, and there's toilets and showers through to the back as well. I was the first custodian of Rock Hall Cottage, which is a bit ironic really, because at the time I was very much the local policeman. I used to come and visit it when I was on duty just to make sure it was okay. But Don and the police had, shall we say, an interesting relationship on occasions. They didn't always see eye to eye. Well, it wasn't difficult, but Don was not much more than 5 feet tall, to be honest, but he was an absolute powerhouse of a man, a human dynamo. And there are some interesting stories about Don's running with the law. But when you think that the first custodian of his memorial was a local copper, he must have turned in his grave, he really must. But I was proud to be connected with it, to be honest. I did 8 years, together with my mate, Dave Brown. He was the booking secretary and I was the custodian, looked after the place. But after 8 years, enough was enough. Plus, I started working as a coach driver and I was away most of the time, so it made sense to step down and let somebody else take on the role. But yes, it's an interesting place. It really is an interesting place. But enough of that. Time to go back a little and cover a bit more distance. It'd be wrong to leave this place without mentioning its last resident. Up until the late 70s, 79 actually, was a fellow called Doug Moller. No, he wasn't. He stayed. He was here until to the end of the 80s. In actual fact, was Doug Moller. He came here as he was employed as a shepherd by the consortium of farmers that bought the land to run sheep on it, and they sold him the house here for a knockdown price, really. But when it all came to nothing, the sheep farming came to nothing, and it all got broken up. The Peak Park, the National Park Authority, bought the estate basically, but because Doug was in his own house, they couldn't force him out. They couldn't force him to sell, but he did eventually sell, and he moved up to a little place called Notbury, which is up on the Derbyshire Staffordshire border, just inside Staffordshire. Doug's still around. His wife Anne, she died some years ago now. But interesting character, again, to say the least, is Doug Moller. There were no services here. There was no running water, no electricity, and it's only when the Peak Park took over and gave the running of the place to the British Mountaineering Council that electricity and water was put in. Lots of changes, but she's here. Dear old Blizzard. Well, she's not so old. She's only a couple of months old. So we're carrying along one of my lovely single track roads. We're passing places across to Roach End. Now up to the right of us is actually Roach End. You can understand these people being out today, can't you? Such beautiful conditions. And if we were to turn left, which we can't, that would take us down to Black Forest. You can see Shutlings again in the distance. Black Forest feature down there, which I'll probably try and include in another video at some point in the future. There's a gorge, a spectacular Gritstone gorge down there called Ludchurch. So I'll take a walk down there when I'm feeling fitter, and we'll have a look at it. It's a pleasure. These up to the right, these are people who are walking down from the trig point at Roach End. Quite envious of them at the minute. I don't think it'll be long before I'm up there myself. You can see what I'm talking about now, with the difference between the White Peak and the Dark. Very much open moorland over here in the Dark Peak. The Gritstone moors. Lovely view today though. As well as the Roaches and Encloud and Ramshire Rocks, as I mentioned already, there's also smaller crags, smaller escarpments, the likes of Newstones, Baldstones and Gibtor, Hanging Stone Rock, which is behind us now. which has a sinister history to it, because that was indeed the hanging stone. It was where the gibbet was. Nice fella. We'll stay off the main road as long as we can. The main leak to Buxton Road is just behind us, but give me the single track every time. Over on the left you can see where we just come from, looking across towards the back of the Roaches as such. Two species of bird that will be very common across here in a very short time are the curlews and the lapwings. Curlews distinctive with their long curved beak. The lapwings very aerobatic. Lapwing, peewit, green plover, alternative names for them. It's just a bit early just yet.